All right, let's get right into it. If you've ever stood on a construction site, you know that constant pressure, right? That feeling of, let's just get started. But what if the real secret to controlling your project isn't about working faster, but about starting smarter? Today, we are going to break down the project lifecycle. And I don't mean the textbook version, I mean the real, practical tool that gives you control on a job site. So let's dive in.
Okay, this right here, this is the classic tug of war. You just landed a contract. Maybe it's for a new firefighting system. The client's yelling, your boss is pushing, start installation, let's go. But the professional mindset, the PMP way of thinking, it makes you pause and ask a totally different question. Hang on, who actually has the authority to say go? You see, that one simple question, that's your first step towards taking real control.
And that leads us to a really crucial point. A lot of people think the project lifecycle, with all its phases, is just about creating paperwork and bureaucracy, just slowing things down. But that's not it at all. Think of it as a strategic framework, and it's designed for one main reason: to reduce your risk and to stop that chaos that sinks so many good projects before they even get going.
Burn this sentence into your brain. Seriously, this is your golden line for your next job interview. When you say this, it tells the hiring manager that you get it. You understand the why behind the process. You don't see phases as a burden. You see them as your best weapon.
So let's build on that. We're going to start with the foundation, the initiation and planning phases. Now, this is the quiet part of the project. It happens long before the first pipe is laid or the first cable is pulled. And believe me, this is where projects are either set up for a huge success or they're quietly doomed to fail. So let me ask you a question. When does a project really begin? If you ask most people on a site, they'll say, oh, it's when we mobilize the team, get the equipment there, order the materials. You know what? That is probably the most common and the most costly mistake you could make. The real starting line is somewhere else entirely. This is the real starting line. The project officially kicks off in the initiation phase. And this is when you lock down the most important things. You confirm the exact scope, what's in, what's out. You identify every single person who has a stake in this. You establish who has the authority to make decisions, and then you wrap all of that up into one document, the project charter. That charter is what makes your project legitimate. It's your North Star. And what happens if you skip this step? Well, you get chaos, pure chaos. You'll have the consultant on site telling your foreman one thing. The client's rep is telling your engineers something totally different, and your own manager is on the phone giving a third set of orders. Without that clear charter, without established authority, you're just throwing your team into a mess before they've even picked up a tool. All right, now for a tougher question. Let's say your team is ready. The materials are on site. Everyone is itching to start. When is it your professional duty to stand up and say, stop, we are not starting? The answer to this is what separates the real pros from the amateurs. And here's the answer. It's a non-negotiable rule. This is another piece of interview gold right here. You simply state, I never allow execution to begin before the baselines are approved, period. That's the rule. A statement like that shows you have discipline and a deep commitment to control. That's exactly what companies are desperate for. So what on earth is a baseline? Think of it like the project's constitution. It's the final, approved, locked-in version of your plan. Your scope, your schedule, that big Gantt chart in Primavera or MS project, and your budget. It becomes the one and only source of truth. And without it, how can you possibly measure if you're on track? You can't. You're just guessing. Now, once those baselines are signed off and approved, we can finally move into the action. But this is where the role of a project manager gets really misunderstood. Your job isn't to do the physical work. Your job is to manage the plan. Let's be absolutely crystal clear on this point. The site engineer, their focus is on the technical stuff, installing the pipes correctly, running the cables, making sure things work. But the project manager's focus is on governance. It's about making sure the work is being done according to the plan, managing communication between all the stakeholders, and ensuring quality assurance is happening. You're not looking over the technician's shoulder, you're managing the system that allows them to succeed. So if you're managing this whole system, the big question that keeps you up at night is this: how do I know if we're drifting away from the plan? How do I know if we are off track from that precious baseline we worked so hard to establish? This is the absolute core of monitoring and controlling. The answer? Data. You know by using data, not feelings. You compare what you plan to accomplish with what you've actually accomplished. The schedule said we should be at 50% complete by now.
Okay, but are we? Or are we really at 45%? By tracking this variance, you can spot a negative trend long before anyone on site even feels it. This lets you take corrective action before a small problem spirals into a full-blown crisis.
Okay, finally, we get to the finish line. But listen, how a project ends is what really separates the true professionals. It's not about just stopping the work. It's about a formal, structured closing process that protects you, your team, and your company.
So what's the common mistake? The last bit of work is done, and poof, the team packs up their tools and leaves. That's not done. In a professional PMI-style closing, done means the client has physically signed a formal acceptance document. It means you've delivered all the O&M manuals and the as-built drawings. It means there's been an official, documented handover. And you have to remember this. Until you have that signed piece of paper, that formal acceptance, your project is still open. And if it's open, it is still your responsibility. If something goes wrong a week later, the risk is still on you. That final handover document, that's your finish line, not the last day of work on site.
So let's pull all of this together into a powerful mindset. Because this isn't just a list of steps to follow, it's a way of thinking. It's a framework that will help you in every interview, on every single project, and definitely on the PMP exam.
You can really simplify the entire life cycle into these 5 core questions. Initiation asks, should we even be doing this project? Planning asks, okay, how exactly are we going to get this done? Execution asks, are we actually performing the work we planned? Control asks, are we on track with that plan? And finally, closing asks the most important question of all. Are we officially, formally, 100% done? Your ability to answer these questions in order is the true heart of project management. So the next time you're in an interview and someone asks you what a project manager really does, this is your answer. You don't just manage tasks and activities. You are the guardian of the entire project. You manage the critical gates, the transitions between the phases to make sure each one is properly finished before the next one even begins. That is how you deliver control. That is how you reduce risk. And that is how you truly lead a project to success.